So I wake up and my first phone message was, okay, your bank account frozen. Okay, I'm calling to my family members and they said, my too. I'm getting message and email from my accountant, my volunteers, my coworkers, everybody is just frozen, so
Really?
Nobody has anything. Yes. And it's no explanation, nothing. Of course, I look into my, bags and I have only €5. Imagine, this is nightmare you can actually experience. If they don't like you, if they want to take over your business, they just can announce you with no ground as a wanted person by Interpol. Whenever regime want to prosecute you, they just can say that you are suspect of money laundering or extremist or terrorist activities. And this gives enormous power to collect data, personal data of people, financial data. And this is the reason why Bitcoin became a solution. So peer-to-peer transactions, Bitcoin, local Bitcoiners at that time saved my life, literally. So
unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yes, and it's heart of year of Brussels,
So today we're talking about human rights in Bitcoin. Whilst most people still associate Bitcoin with making or losing money quickly, many overlook its potential as a tool to strengthen human rights. And we have a perfect guest for that, Lyudmyla Kozlovska. She's a human rights, Bitcoin and freedom tech advocate and the founder and president of the Open Dialogue Foundation. Could you briefly explain what your foundation does and what your core mission is?
Yes. Hello, everyone. I'm happy to speak with you, Daniel, and everybody who is joining our discussion. Open Dialogue Foundation, it's a human rights organization, and our main role to bring voices of those who are politically persecuted to the international audience. So whenever they overlooked, whenever they are as individuals, as entrepreneurs, judges, lawyers, anybody of their family members who politically persecuted because they were defending human rights, because they're opposing corruption and different, torture cases and other things, they were politically persecuted, and we bring their voice to be defended, to be released from the prisons, to stop tortures against them and other human rights violations for over 15 years. We became a bridge between them and institutions like European Parliament, national parliaments of European Union, Canada, UK, US. And it's very important that their voices are heard, because the only way how you can release political prisoners, how you can stop political persecution, when Western governments include these names of politically persecuted people in their resolutions, statements, public statements, trade agreements, and other official documents. This is what makes regimes, authoritarian governments, to release these people. And this is our main focus. A part of it, we were also conducting a very sophisticated reforms of international bodies, for example, like Interpol, police organization, which became one of the most favorite tools for dictators to prosecute people globally. So if they don't like you, if they want to take over your business, they just can announce you with no ground as a wanted person by Interpol in the past. And you have no remedies at that time. Since 2013, we were doing this important reform. And then back in 2016, it was completed. So our recommendations with remedies, that person, if listed with false grounds, was in this red notice of Interpol, now he can or she can be removed within 1 month and even demand a compensation. And this is one of our biggest achievements. Of course, there are a number other of tools which allows authoritarian regime to violate these important instruments of international cooperation. And one of the main reasons why they're able to do so, because they abuse of anti-money laundering and counterterrorism regulation. This is the basis of all violation of human rights. Whenever regime want to prosecute you, they just can say that you are suspect of money laundering or extremist or terrorist activities. And this gives enormous power to collect data, personal data of people, financial data. They don't need even to have any decision of the court. They don't need anything, because these anti-money laundering and counterterrorism regulations, global laws, built on trust that one day authoritarian regimes or non-democratic regimes will comply with requests from Western democracies. Of course, as you can see, where we live right now, it's not happening. Otherwise, we would not have all these wars, all these terrorist attacks and many other things which happening around because, everybody should comply to this global regulation. But unfortunately, it doesn't work. What it does, it makes us all exposed and all transparent in front of regimes from authoritarian countries and dictatorial countries who cooperate closely, who weaponize their financial system. And this is the reason why we started to use Bitcoin. And this is the reason why we defend Bitcoin and we teach people how to use this financial instrument of freedom. And we call it freedom tech, freedom technology for us and many other activists who financially excluded.
Can I ask where you're focusing on? Are you focusing on specific countries? Are you being contacted by people? Are you looking for those people? How are you being made aware of those atrocities or problems?
So for the beginning, since I'm Ukrainian, I used to work more, of course, on Ukrainian focus. But then I understood as an activist, you cannot just solve your problems in one country. Actually, to solve problems of my country, I have to have solidarity of entire world, right? So in this situation, we started to work also with neighbors of Ukraine. A lot of people came to Ukrainian Maidan, Orange Revolution, and then Euromaidan to support Ukrainians from different countries. And one of those countries was Kazakhstan, Kyrgyzstan, and many other countries. And they said that, look, we have the same problems, but our voice nobody heard. Can you join us? Can you help us to reach out these members of the parliament? And they started to tell me about all of these stories. I was in these countries. I met personally with a lot of activists and opposition leaders. And this is how I took their testimonies as a witness. I saw literally what's happened with them. And this, of course, had a huge impact on me. And I started to bring their voices to the international institutions. Then, of course, I understood together with my team that if we want to find solution, and we saw how sophisticated tools Kazakhstani authority, Turkish authority, Russians using against their members of opposition, we thought that, okay, we need to collect testimonials how globally, for example, such instruments like Interpol or anti-money laundering regulation abused. And this is the reason why we have a global coalition addressing specific issues. Or we have focused coalitions. For example, in case of Kazakhstan, we focus and collect testimonials exposing how Kazakhstan abusing anti-extremism, anti-terrorism regulation, anti-money laundering regulation. And we have quite big group, activists, not extremists, who specifically focus on this issue. So people from local activists from all over the country, they inform us about every human rights violation. And it's a network for almost 10,000 of activists. In case of, for example, financial exclusion and abuse of anti-money laundering regulation, we have also a global network, which is called BTC Coalition, Building True Change Coalition, which already has global scope in a way because we bring voices of prominent oppositioners, human rights activists, tech developers, Bitcoin miners even, right? And financial regulated institutions. Why? Because all of them experience or financial exclusion, or they had to financially exclude people like us, and they have courage to say about it loudly, right? That regulation proposed by Western countries unfortunately abused and lead to financial exclusion on insane scale. And as the only tool for the moment which exists, it's actually peer-to-peer transactions of Bitcoin, because even regulated exchanges, they the same way, because it's regulated in the same way as the traditional financial institutions, they tend to refuse to give you right for financial services. And this brings severe consequences. It means that you cannot fundraise. It means you cannot store, you cannot pay, you cannot actually do anything. And with today's reality, when cash became less and less acceptable as a payment, you have no other instruments. And this is what we say it's main repression and main danger, basically undermining tool for our rule of law and human rights in Western democracies, because we see how it's very abused as a financial institution, as an old financial institution, but also like new entities like crypto asset services providers abused by authoritarian regimes to silent voices. So we have to be aware. And this is what we focus on. And we have, of course, more we doing this kind of podcast like with you. I also quite active in social media. We publish regular reports on these issues. So we, of course, get as much as possible voices. So whenever somebody wants to contact us, they contact us, and then we ask, please provide us with full your story, how you were financially excluded, how your rights were violated. Of course, we also have limited resources, right? That's why we're also looking for partnership. We're looking for donations. We're looking for expertise. So we can actually manage to help really people. And we build in coalition because this is one of the most effective tools when jointly you solve the problem. And for example, recently, when there was a main attack on privacy of communication, and specifically on messengers like Signal, like Simple X and many others, we try to activate as much as possible Bitcoin community activists in Europe, because if you're not active, if you don't say politicians, yes, I care about privacy, this is a moment when those politicians who care about privacy, they will be silent. And it means that those politicians who are actually attacking privacy with a pretext, for example, protecting your rights, they don't see the full picture, or they don't want to see the full picture. It means your rights are going to be limited. So this is how we build it. And we are very happy to say that at least at 8 countries, Bitcoiners joined our call. They were knocking the door to politicians. They were sending emails. They were very loud in social media. And this brings effects. This is what we want to achieve. This is what we call ambassadors of freedom tech. And we want to have this kind of freedom embassy for technology. Of course, ideally to have it in Brussels, but also in other capitals and small even cities in Europe.
Yeah, amazing. So you're also in close contact with policymakers and politicians. What is the language they understand, or what's the recipe to actually get your ideas through? Is there a way that you think is the best way, or what's the language they actually understand?
The best language, what they understand, it's when you come with arguments, with your personal experience, and when you are joint voice, and they say, look, I'm your actually constituency, and I have a problem which your regulation you voted for affect me, my business. You destroy our competitiveness. You destroyed our technological potential. I have no chance to develop as a startup in Europe, or my family members are exposed to actually abuses of their financial data, private data by authoritarian regimes. Whenever you gather all information in one huge database, which became a honeypot for all dictators in the world, right? So if you speak with these simple but very argumentative messages, and you go to specifically for their press conferences, offices, you send them emails, you do it systematically. This is one of the most effective, of course, campaign for local communities and local activists. On the high level, you have to monitor, and this is way more complicated things. This is what we are doing, and that's what we are gathering for support. We look into every single regulatory act, and we speak with politicians. We bring experts. We bring activist voices, those who were financially excluded or any other rights were violated, for example, like startups who cannot anymore develop in Europe. They have to immigrate because the compliance law are so hard for them that they cannot just afford it, right? Or discriminated because, for example, Financial Action Task Force classify everybody as everybody who is creating new technology as a high risk clients. It means that every financial institutions is going to be classifying these people the same. It means that everybody, if European Union accept, and unfortunately European Union accept this kind of language of Financial Action Task Force recommendations and other jurisdictions globally, because Financial Action Task Force is issuing their recommendations globally. It means startups in majority of the countries in the world assumed as something high risk. It's kind of almost like terrorist activity, but it's not good to recognize people who inventing something new, who is actually producing tools for freedom as something dangerous for society, dangerous to be limiting them.
Also, the high risk it seems like a label that's just been put on them, but you don't understand the logical argument behind it. And that's kind of like a black box, right?
Yes.
Would transparency there actually help to make that a better process?
accountability. Financial institutions should not be replacing police institutions or, for example, prosecutor, because in this case, you have judges who will stand on your rights and where you can have somebody who's going into meritum. Banks or any kind of financial institutions, they shouldn't. They don't, according to this Financial Action Task Force assumptions and recommendations developed on their basis law, they're not obliged to explain you, me, anybody, why they deprive your right to have financial services, why they're killing your business, recognizing it as a high risk, why they judge you on this, on that meritum. From their sides, they have kind of explanation, because if they provide you services, it means that they will be deprived to have a license, right? For example, we have support from the Belgian parliament, Belgian government. Belgian government issued a special decree to guarantee us right for banking as an open dialogue foundation in Belgium. We went to banks with this decree and said, like, we have a right to banking services. Please open us account. And they said, with AML CFT regulation, we have no obligation to open you account. What does it mean? It means that even if on one jurisdiction, you have this legal document law, which guarantees your right for financial services organization, entity, and person, right? And right now, institutions operate globally because they transact globally. And if other jurisdictions, they don't respect this one jurisdiction law, they will deprive license in other jurisdictions. They will lose their business. So why they should lose their business? Guarantee me right for finance, right? So it's not a problem only of financial institutions. I would say it's first of all problem of regulation, failure of regulation of Western governments who unfortunately don't see on human rights aspect. And we ask European Commission, have they ever conducted human rights, consequences of adoption of anti-money laundering regulation, counterterrorism regulation in the EU? There is no such, data. Why? Because if it's conducted, it will show enormous mass of financial exclusion and with no explanation. So this is a problem. You were right. Black box, basically implementing police function for financial institutions with no remedy. And the most important, that all of us, we financially exposed because it's very easy for different bad, malicious actors to weaponize our financial data. It means it's easy to destroy your personal finance. It's easy to destroy your as a competitor, your business. It's easy to destroy you as a state. If, for example, one malicious state abuse Financial Action Task Force recommendations and weaponize your banking data. It's so important, and we don't see this discussion in media. Why? Because, unfortunately, financial institutions also quite often buy advertisement in media, right? So they will not say something against their biggest client, right? So it's really important that citizens of European Union care about their privacy, both financial data and communication, and they look into new solutions and they defend their tools, financial tools, which guarantee them freedoms. In case of traditional financial institutions, I think it's very hard to defend. It's doable, but very hard. But in case of Bitcoin, we need to defend developers who develop these freedom tools. We need to defend infrastructure, which guarantees you freedoms. It means that Bitcoin miners, which are severely attacked here in European Union. And also we need to defend end users, those who, and facilitators of industry, right? For example, those who help to exchange peer-to-peer Bitcoin to cash. And of course, I also advise, guys, we live in a world where we don't know if we have tomorrow electricity. We should have also cash because we just don't know what could happen next. And I see it in Ukraine. I see it in many other jurisdictions. When you don't know what can happen next and you need to have your tools, you need to have always plan B. And in many cases, also cash is very dangerous. In case of Ukraine, you cannot, if you leave the country, especially during the first days of Russian full invasion on occupied territory. So those who were having actually Bitcoin, they were able to leave these territories. Others were robbed and many other things happened. So a lot of instruments in this regard, like freedom tech instruments like Simplex, like, Nostr, like independent decentralized network, and the social media, and of course, the Bitcoin peer-to-peer transactions. It's something what you have to know in today's world if you care about your freedoms, like if you care about future of your children. You just have to know it. It's reality.
Could you explain what Simplex is? I never heard of Simplex. What is that?
Simplex, it's a kind of application, it's messenger, the same like Signal, but it's decentralized. So I strongly advise to learn how to use it. It's very comfortable. And it's allowed you to keep your communication on your server. So for human rights defender, for any area who cares about, privacy, it's really good to keep your communication with yourself on your servers. And you see what's happened with Telegram.
So you can use it on your phone? It's not like an app that you just go to the App Store and install it?
No, you can install it, but there are a lot of functionality which allows you to make it extremely, it's already secure, but you can do it even more advanced secure in a kind of like not too much sophisticated moves you need to do. You can learn it from online, or you can ask people on, for example, Damus. It's one of the relay of social network like Nostr, right? And people will happy. Bitcoin developers will be happy to explain you how to use these privacy tools.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a lot of discussion after Pavel Durov got arrested in France.
Exactly.
So people were looking for new messengers. So your tip is to use Simplex. Is that right?
I mean, it's very difficult right now to replace Telegram. We use Telegram as one of the main tools for, like spreading information, receiving information, databases, and many other things, because it's very useful. You have no this kind of functionality on any other app. It's super app, right? We were even able at some point to do fundraising thanks to a wallet of Telegram. So we extremely concerned that Telegram right now sharing all data, for example, with Kazakhstan regime and many others. It's led to severe consequences. That some archive with human rights violation, which we cannot store on Google or any other big servers, because Kazakhstan authorities were able to reach out them and remove. So Telegram was quite for a long time for us a place where we were storing these archives. Right now, they also deleted it. So it's really hurtful. And this is why we also work with different developers looking for solution. At the same time, Simplex is way more comfortable, for example, than Signal. Signal, we see that it's operating like NGO. They will not much give you functionality. They don't develop. Simplex is more as a company, private entity. So they have these ambitions to be super up. So they all the time constantly working on the improvement. And we really like it in this regard. I remember just 1 year ago, it was a lot of bugs, like it's always a new startup, right? But now they're really good. So it's long way to become Telegram, but it's really good as a security tool for communication. And you can do a lot of things public, but you're not afraid to on Telegram still. But if you want to securely talk to, and you just don't want your private data to be shared, you use Simplex.
Interesting. Good one. Yeah. So I understood correctly, right, that your way to Bitcoin was actually that you were debanked yourself. Is that correct? So could
Yes.
you explain a little bit how that happened and what the consequences are for you, or were?
So since we were very effective in releasing political prisoners, hundreds of political prisoners were released, we completed reform of Interpol, cutting off abilities of regimes to abuse this important instrument without accountability. We bring them accountable for this human rights violation. They started to think how to revenge against me personally, my team, my family members, and everybody who was associated with us.
What does that mean, family members?
Like my husband in the past, or for example, my family, my brothers, everybody around me, just literally like everybody. So everybody was targeted in a way that, first of all, there was smear attack in more than 20 languages. Second, there was different kind of criminal or civil proceedings against us.
And sorry, an attack by who?
By 3 authoritarian regimes. It was Moldova during Plahotniuc oligarch time. It was until 2019, since 2016 until 2019. Then it was Poland during Law and Justice Party, 2017 until last year, No, sorry, not last year. It's already changed year. 2023. Yes, today is 2025. And it was Kazakhstan. It's still Kazakhstan, by the way, because this is where regime it was not changed. So these three states were initially against Open Dialogue Foundation, coordinating their efforts, and this brought us to be financially excluded in Belgium. I was announced a threat to national security in these countries, and in different way they were abusing anti-money laundering counterterrorism regulation, getting all my financial data, looking into these transactions with whom I was, for example, cooperating, donating as foundation, or where I was buying my food, who was my doctors, everything, like literally. It's like, it's banking data, it's your roadmap. And this is how they can destroy you. This is one thing. Second, right now, after some regimes were also changed in Moldova and in Poland, others joined to Kazakhstan. It's like Uzbekistan and also Kyrgyzstan and Turkey. Why? Because we brought voices of those who were politically motivated, tortured, kidnapped, killed, or who helped to circumvent sanctions to Russia. So those people and entities, they basically fronting Kazakhstani, Kyrgyz, Uzbek, and Turkish authorities and attacking us in different institutions. So this is where we see endless ability for those regime to prosecute you with anti-money laundering country regulation abuses. And while I was financially excluded completely, so imagine one day, like I was, like majority of people, not much using cash. So I wake up and my first phone message was, okay, your bank account frozen. Okay, I'm calling to my family members and they say, my too. I'm getting message and email from my accountant, my volunteers, my coworkers, everybody is just frozen, you know, so really? Nobody has anything. Yes. And it's no explanation, nothing. Of course, I look into my, you know, like bags and I have only €5. Imagine this is nightmare you can actually experience.
Absolutely.
So, in this situation, you start to think, okay, what alternative I have? How can I get money from others who wants to help me if the banking system doesn't work? If they just de-risk me, I have no other possibility to get money, right? No Western Union, nothing. Like you literally cannot get any services. And this is the reason why Bitcoin became a solution. So peer-to-peer transactions, Bitcoin, local Bitcoiners at that time saved my life, literally. So
unbelievable. Yeah, unbelievable.
Yes, and it's heart of Europe, Brussels, you know. And I had, look, at the same time, I understood one very important and I would say severe lesson. I had all political support because I was under protection of Belgium government and parliament, European Parliament, German Bundestag, and many other presidents like Macron even, and German president at that time. And at the same time, all of this political influence means nothing when your banking data, financial data, private data can be so easily weaponized. So that's why I'm saying it's one of the most drastic, very severe tool in hands of all dictators. That's why I'm saying that we are at the really edge of our existence as a Western civilization if we don't deal with abuses of anti-money laundering country regulation, if we not reform this so-called travel rule, because it's built on assumption that Western democracy will get information or cooperation in the future or in presence from authoritarian regimes. What authoritarian regimes doing? They undermine every second our rule of law, human rights, everything in our Western civilizations. And it's so important to look onto consequences of every package of AML regulation adopted in Western countries. What is usage cases? How really it's effective, or how it's killing industry, how it's killing our new technology companies, how it's undermined financial rights, how it's exposing all of us, allowing more and more have powers over such countries like Russia, Turkey, and many others.
Yeah. And this is happening now, and we are potentially looking at seeing CBDCs introduced, which
it's even more dangerous enemy.
The biggest nightmare you can imagine. But you could resolve these issues, or you still debanked, or
I still debank. I don't have bank account in Belgium as organization. So Open Dialogue Foundation doesn't have bank account.
Okay. And how do you deal with that?
We use Bitcoin still, BTC Pay server. This is how you can donate us. We also have, we still have banking, for example. This is very funny in Poland. So while we were under attack civilly in Poland, we were not financially excluded there. It's hard to say for which extent it was position of the financial institutions, because everybody know perfectly that it's politically motivated case at the time. But you see how it affected us in other jurisdictions. We used to have bank accounts in UK, for example, with Revolut. Everything was terminated, frozen. So we, over 6 months, were waiting for defreeze our money, our volunteers, our account, and the same with Wise. One actually also important aspect to say that one of the reasons why our last bank account in Belgium was terminated, it's because we organized humanitarian aid for Ukraine. So since first hours of Russian full invasion to Ukraine, we announced a public crowdfunding campaign to support Ukraine, and all of our crowdfunding campaigns were terminated. Just again and again, one was exemption. It was in Poland. Zrzutka.pl. This is the only what was operating. But globally, GoFundMe, Patronate, Wise, anything else, PayPal, everything was terminated. And of course, we started to use Bitcoin. With Bitcoin, we were able to fundraise within hours important amount for us to buy hundreds of sets of bulletproof vests, medical equipment, and we were able to deliver humanitarian aid for the second day of Russian full invasion to Ukraine, to Kyiv and to Lviv. And we also shared our experience how to fundraise and how to pay with Bitcoin to Ukrainian authorities at that time. Yeah. So, yeah, and up to now, we delivered aid for Ukraine for amount more than 9 million euros for the last 3 years. We're very proud that new technologies, freedom technologies, always on our side. So we really grateful for every developer who helping us in this regards to use these tools.
Yeah, so Bitcoin is the only currency you use for that. You don't use Monero or other cryptocurrencies? No,
in case of Ukraine, we used to use at the beginning USDT because it was one of the most popular. Ukraine was third country in the world of mass adoption for cryptocurrencies. But in case of majority of our humanitarian and human rights work, we cannot use other coins for one simple reason. Whenever you use it with crypto asset services providers, it means that your banking data, your financial data, crypto asset services data can be shared with dictators. And we have very painful experience when in Uzbekistan, everybody who was fundraising through crypto assets exchanges, then they were arrested, tortured, disappeared, sentenced for many years. So we don't anymore use in touch exchanges. In this case, and Kazakhstan is so sophisticated, Russia also, that they right now also learning how to follow transactions on blockchain. So we, of course, using self-hosted wallets, but we're really defending Lightning, for example, or mixers, any kind of privacy tools, because without this, you are absolutely naked in front of very sophisticated governments who wants to have Bitcoin for themselves, but not as your tool of freedom. So as every tool, it can be used by bad actors and good actors, and we need to make sure that good actors know how to protect themselves and actually not allow bad actors to use it.
Yeah, this is a good reminder. And I mean, you are the best showcase yourself to show what Bitcoin can do with regards to promoting and supporting human rights. And it is a good reminder what risks everyone has as soon as you possibly do something that is not in the interest of a government. They can lock you out financially. I mean, and with CBDCs, we can already see what's happening basically in China. So, yeah, if that's combined with a digital ID and a social credit score, and you're not behaving properly or according to what is required, then very quickly you can lose everything and basically be out on the street. With regards to AML and CFT, could you maybe once more explain what that exactly is and how that is used again as a repression transnationally?
Sure. So I will try to be as simple as possible. So anti-money laundering regulation and counterterrorism regulation, it's global laws established on the basis of recommendations of G7 countries. Like headquarters of Financial Action Task Force in Paris, but actually...
So not all countries are involved or agree to that?
It's kind of key countries which develop it. It's G7. And then there are members who join in it, right? And they kind of comply with it or don't comply. It's interesting. For example, US is one of the key initiator as also main brain behind the Financial Action Task Force, but they don't comply with quite significant amount of their own recommendations, which gives a very good question to, for example, European Union, why they should recognize, for example, new technology as a high risk if, for example, US doesn't do so, right? Mm-hmm. So this is just one question which I asked recently at the meeting with the European Commission, and they were quite surprised to learn about it. But I think it's a very important question which everybody from Europe has to ask their regulators, their governmental representatives and parliamentarians, so they understand that you care. You care about your privacy, you care about conditions where your business can be developed, and you also understand how anti-money laundering regulation is affecting you. For example, if you're new business and you want to get any loan, or you just want to have any kind of activity, you have to explain the source of your money. Even if it's just source of your parents or your family money, it's just enormous amount of explanation you have to provide to bank about your own money to start anything. And it doesn't guarantee you that you will be accepted to conduct your business, especially if it's recognized, for example, by ESG policy or anti-money laundering regulation policies as a high risk. This is like keywords which allows financial institutions deprive you financial services. So no matter how you are good, if in law written that your kind of activities as a business person recognized as a high risk, you highly probability that you will be de-risked. Second, with anti-money laundering regulation, you agree, because nobody is negotiating with financial institutions, right? You just give a document, you sign, you agree by default. You have no chance to discuss it with bank, right? If you don't agree, you go to another one, which has exactly the same expectations that you have to comply. You cannot, in fact, change the agreement with financial institutions where you keep your money or which guarantees your right to transact, which means for them monopoly. And AML regulation guarantee them the right to refuse your services with no explanation. This is what, again, Financial Action Task Force recommendations give them as a right. So they have from one side police function or function of decision, do guarantee your right for banking or not, do agree for conducting your financial activities of your selected business activities or not, do, allow you to buy something or not, and many other things. So it's very dangerous when you delegate all of these powers to financial institutions with no accountability methods. And all of this done in order to protect us, to make us more secure, right? But does it make us secure? My case proved that with all political support, with all, connections, and I was one of the most successful at that time person who was releasing political prisoners from the most severe conditions, like from Russia, North Caucasus, or, from the most difficult conditions in different countries. I was not able to guarantee and protect myself because my financial data in Europe, the same like yours, the same like everybody who's watching this podcast, easily can be weaponized. My case, that I already know that my data was weaponized. The difference between me, you, and others who watching this podcast, that they not yet became a target. But the question, do they want to become a target? What do they want to experience what I was experienced, right? And what tools they have as a plan B to prevent all of these abuses. So for this reason, it's very important to see what's happening with AML regulation. It's very important to defend privacy remedies. For example, to stop trust between Western democracies, for example, European Union, and all other authoritarian states. If there is violation of rule of law and human rights, they have to put restriction, and your data shouldn't be transmitted there with no remedies. It's judge who has to decide if your data has to be shared or not bank, not just without remedy sending all your financial data for somebody in other state. Then you have to be guaranteed for financial services, no matter what. How are you going to conduct your defense if you don't have bank account? How are you going to pay your lawyer? Where you will get your sources? If all of your resources are frozen, you should be guaranteed to have a right for financial services. Another for these, financial institutions has to have authoritarian power to say, you will not conduct this legitimate way of businesses. And this is the reason why I think we really have to have freedom technology embassies and ambassadors, advocates who will defend both developers, both investors and users. And in principle, freedom technology as a main tool for freedoms, especially because we're going to live, and we live right now, in digital world. The most wanted in digital world, your data. How you protect your data. And it's different data. It's your medical data. It's your security communication data. It's your financial data. This is key things. If they are undermined, we are totally exposed. We have no chances to survive.
But that's the goal, don't you think? They wrap it up in protecting us from money laundering or whatever. But don't you think it's in fact what they actually want at the end of the day?
I don't think so, because when I work with members of European Parliament on amendments on anti-money laundering regulation, we got majority of European Parliament from across political parties to actually protecting these safeguards and proposing them. But what's happened at that time? At that time, Senator Warren was connecting with a special rapporteur in European Parliament, in the US also representing financial action task forces. According to some sources, allegedly were contacted with several prominent governments in EU as a framework of FATF. And they put pressure to cancel all our proposals. And unfortunately, at that time, we didn't find enough of voices from the side of, European community, even Bitcoiners, to support our calls for financial freedoms. So you can go to the website of European Parliament and see there is a motion for resolution with all proposed amendments in defense of privacy of payment, recognizing crypto assets as a payment and crowdfunding instrument. Imagine, like protecting financial data, guaranteeing right for banking for entities and individuals in Europe, and many other things. All of this was cancelled and overvoted on the pressure of European Commission and member states of the European Union. So it's governments. And it could be the same situation with chat control regulation, which was affecting privacy of communication. But luckily, in this case, more people were listening already our calls, not only all our calls, but many other. But I'm saying with regard of Bitcoiners, we were trying and work organizing this campaign. And they actually followed this instruction, and we were able to some sort defend these instruments. Of course, it doesn't mean that it's permanent defense. No, there are a lot of actors. We don't know exactly why, but they coming back with these malicious proposals. And it's hard to judge either are they really believe in what they're doing or they have their own agenda. The most important is not allow them to limit our rights. And we have all tools to do so, uniting our efforts, joining campaigns, going to your politicians, speaking about supporting the nations, NGOs, and other activists, lawyers who working on this issue and defending your privacy now, so you can enjoy and your family with privacy of payment, communication, and many other aspects now and in future, not losing it. Because when you lose it, it's very hard to restore, almost impossible. Look on Venezuela, look on many other countries which used to be prosperous, and how many years it takes to get back to this point. I will tell you, it's not only about political activists. I know a lot of Polish business people, one of the most richest people in Poland at the time. Like, for example, Piotr Osiecki. He was one of the most prominent investors in Poland. He was not active politically at all. Like, no connection. He was just very successful. And because he was very successful, his business became very much wanted. But at that time, Law and Justice Party in power. They just wanted to take over his business. So he arbitrarily arrested him, He took him more than 1 year, 3 times in a row, like in arbitrary detention facility, so being arbitrary arrest, and proposed him to sell his one of the most expensive company for hundreds of billions of zlotys for 1 zloty. 1 zloty is less than like 1/3 of $1. Imagine. So this is like normal raid attack. And this is an example that it's not only about activists. It's about whenever you're successful business or somebody wants just to take over your business. I have also the same examples on people who were just perfect, brilliant tech developers, and they were doing amazing logistics operations in Poland. The same, just because they didn't want to work for example, do corruptive schemes for Polish government, they became a victim of persecution. And it's a lot of this kind of examples. So it's not only about political activists or government who doesn't want you to speak up. It's also about if you're successful, if you in some way just like you're doing something what they want from you, they just take it. They don't explain anything. All these business people were prosecuted and how they were financially excluded with abuse of anti-money laundering regulation. Their bank accounts were terminated. Their businesses were destroyed in a day because business cannot operate if you don't have bank account. If you're all partners, if you're all, contractors under pressure, tax controls, and many other things, they just start this process and they abuse and exhaust you until you completely destroyed. And that's why it's so dangerous. And that's why we have to be aware. We have to speak up about these topics and we have to defend ourselves.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people could experience that during COVID because,
yes.
I saw it in Germany. If you were critical just about what the government was proposing, if you had just a different opinion about things, like experts, like professors in Germany, they had their bank account frozen. They even had to flee Germany in some cases. And a lot of people could experience that back then. So I guess that woke up a lot of those people. I see a very clear tendency towards more control and more power and more surveillance. And for me, I cannot really believe that this is just a lack of understanding of what's going on. So isn't there an agenda?
I think there is always agenda of those who are more organized, and right now more organized authoritarian regimes. So we see that we follow pattern of COVID restrictions from China. Yeah. I'm glad that we ended this madness, but it doesn't mean that this madness would be ended if there is no protest and a lot of voices who organize themselves. If you want to end up madness of exposing your financial data and your rights, violation of privacy, it has to be the same protest. It has to be the same organized, voices of people who say, no, we care about privacy. No, we want guarantee of our rights for conducting businesses and many other things. You cannot suspect that somebody is going to give your rights for granted. We enjoy our rights right now because somebody in the past hundreds of years ago sacrificed their life and their businesses, their families, everything for us in this time to enjoy our rights. You cannot give everything for granted. And human rights is something completely the most important and the most expensive thing in the world. Just because we were born with this right in Western countries as a privilege, I would say, societies comparing to other countries. It doesn't mean that it's going to be guaranteed for us forever. If you don't defend it, you're going to lose it.
And especially that time actually also made me quite critical about NGOs and some foundations during COVID, like the WHO or even the UN. Or the foundations.
But it's not NGOs. Like, let's see the truth. Organizations where you have state body representatives, which affects, actually issues decrease, where you see leaders of the countries are the main figures. It has nothing to do with NGOs. NGO is non-governmental organization. The moment when organizations are represented by governmental people, It's not anymore NGO. That's it.
Yeah, yeah. But they were also, or WHO is also funded by private individuals. But indeed, so how do you ensure that your organization remains transparent and accountable in its operation and in its decision-making process?
So we do the same simple, I would say the most effective strategy as Bitcoin doing, proof of work. Proof of work, transparency. The reason why we were so much under attack, and all of our donors and all of our recipients of the funds, because we were absolutely transparent, because we were publishing. We never hide it. I mean, from one side, they, of course, get into our banking data at that time. But from other side, they were going also after those people who publicly support us. And for this reason, we really believe that there should be mechanisms developed to defend donors and recipients of the fund, and basically NGOs. And you have to judge organizations on what they are doing. If you don't agree with them, what they're doing, if you think they violate your rights, you have to have remedies and clear procedures how to defend your rights. So this is number one thing. Second, of course, we publish always our financial report in many languages, and you can easily go and check. And the most important, you also see who is attacking you. So if you are an organization which attacks at least by 7 regimes, I think it says something that you're quite effective organization, no?
Yes.
And if a number of politically persecuted people tortured, released every time after your action, if you ensure that there are remedies for international bodies abused by dictators, and which gives more rights for any individual and entity who were persecuted and violated their rights, I think it's also quite significant things what you can see. So I think this concept of proof of work, one of the most effective judgment, because you can say a lot of talks, right? There are proof of talk and there is proof of work. And sometimes people who has proof of work, they have beautiful PR because they have a lot of time to talk, but they have not much things to do. And they're quite famous. But those who actually doing proof of work and those who doesn't get funding from the states, and I think this is also an issue in general in Europe, because majority of NGOs getting funds from the states. Why? Because there is no culture from individuals to donate systematically for NGOs. Who is going to defend your rights if you don't ready to donate? Like organizations not for profit still should have enough money to have experts, to have brilliant people and talented people working their team to defend your rights. This is everyday war. Why they should be motivated to work in non-governmental sectors is nobody is donating, and only governmental sector is providing donations. Then it means that those governments, they will have the last say what this NGO is doing, right? So in US, you have completely different situation. You have a lot of private foundations, which are donors actually, and a lot of individuals who understand the importance of having independent civil society. So they have way more ability to navigate these freedoms. Actually, in Switzerland, the same. But it's not if you look into European Union in general practice there, unfortunately. So we have to be responsible, and we have to support NGOs who actually doing it. And this is the reason why I was doing it as a person who from one side was a successful entrepreneur. From other side, instead of just spending my money for expensive vacation or other things, I just was doing what I was think that was most important at the time, supporting those people who, were politically persecuted, humanitarian aid for many countries where I could. Of course, it's uncomparable for state money, but I think I did my contribution and I wanted to show this example. And a lot of Ukrainians were doing it during both Orange Revolution and Euromaidan, and they still doing it right now. Because, the first 3 days when Russia invaded to Ukraine, majority of the states, Western states, just left us. That's it. But I have to say that a lot of Western countries' citizens, they were donating with Bitcoin, donating with any possible support. They were coming to the borders. They were helping a lot of Ukrainians. So I'm very and deeply grateful for all of these people.
How can people support you, actually?
You can go to, first of all, if you are a brilliant expert on IML and you actually want to help us to be a voice, join our coalition. This is number one. We need to have brilliant, talented people joining us, helping us to analyze regulation, producing recommendations, talking to politicians. even from time to time, we need this kind of talented people. Second, we need, of course, financial support, and you can donate to us, for example, through BTC Pay server. It's very easy. You go on our website, and the first you see donation in Bitcoin. We have bank accounts in Poland, as I said, so you can still donate if you prefer cash or for example, fiat payments through these channels. So there are different options you can do. And of course, it's very important when we do calls, for example, like it was in case of chat control regulation or IML regulation. Right now, we're doing campaign to raise awareness of how peer-to-peer transactions, Lightning, or other privacy payment instruments are attacked in EU, or, for example, Bitcoin mining, especially in Norway, under attack. It's important to be vocal. It's important to find the way how to, activate local communities, go to politicians, co-sign letters, not using ChatGPT, but actually, just a little bit from your heart, why you care about privacy, why it's important for you. Go and see these politicians. Ask this journalist why he doesn't actually mention the fact of weaponization of financial data. Did he spoke with activists whose data was financially exposed and weaponized by authoritarian regimes, who using Bitcoin as human rights tools, who using privacy communication as a human rights tools, right? So we need to do these things actually as much as possible. So we became ambassadors of freedom. Ideally, to have a place in Brussels, embassy of Freedom Technology Embassy, we call it, right? So we will be able to, gather these people from talented from different countries of EU, but also host a guest from US and many other countries, and actually defend every day, day by day, in front of European Parliament, in front of European Commission, inviting politicians to this place, showing them how Bitcoin actually mined, why it's actually good for environment, how it works in, for example, gridless in African countries, in Kenya, how it's actually the only tool which gives light to children and the hope for them to get education, right, and some money, and many, many other aspects. So how it's good for EU grid, which struggle to have funding to renovation, right? So a lot of the things, they has to be discussed, but they have to have their really ambassadors of freedom technology. And we should have them in one place. And then, of course, coordinated as much as possible in different cities, even in villages, whatever. The most important, our voices has to be heard and must be effective. The same like authoritarian regime effective in undermining our rights, freedoms, and rule of law in Western civilizations. Yeah.
Absolutely. I'll put the links to you in the description, so they can, if someone wants to support you, they can do that. We have a very interesting situation. So Bitcoin is probably going to be announced as a strategic reserve soon, and then maybe other players will join in. Then at the same time, CBDCs may be introduced in Europe, maybe already next year. So, let's
do campaign not to allow it.
Absolutely. So what is your outlook? Are you looking into the future more concerned or more positive?
I'm, as a person who was overcoming a very difficult situation, think that nothing is impossible. Everything right now in our hands. If we able to organize our defense of freedom technology, tools and our freedoms, financial freedom, privacy freedoms, which I think basis of everything, we will be able to overcome it. Look, I was overcoming a situation thanks to freedom technology from the situation where normally people commit suicide. I'm not joking. I saw it many times. And I'm really deeply grateful for developers. And this is why I'm defending it with all my heart and all my passion, right? And all my team is doing the same. So I really believe that nothing is impossible. We can do it and we should do it. We just have to mobilize ourselves. We have to understand our responsibilities, that nobody is going to solve our problems. We're going to solve it. It was done in Europe before. Centuries of those who actually guarantees us these rights we are right now have and could potentially lose. And we just should care about, their impact in the history and do our impact on history, protecting our rights, protecting our freedoms.
Yeah. Wow. thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise with us today. And yeah, personal, touching story. You can see what repression can do to human lives, and that's very drastic and very heavy. I mean, I wish you all the best in promoting financial freedom and inclusion. As we close, I'd like to remind our audience that change begins with awareness and action. And at the end of the podcast, I usually ask my guests what they think is the most important to know about Bitcoin. Like if you would think about the attention span of the people online, which is usually around 30 seconds. If you had 30 seconds to orange pill a newcomer, what would you say?
Care about your freedom of money. Bitcoin is guaranteed, but you have also to defend yourself and Bitcoin together.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yes, thank you.